One driver is making enemies very early on this season, and I have a very simple question. At least I think it is. Are we racing to the line or are we not? Because at this point, I'm a little frustrated. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, it's Taylor Kitchen and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line on the ATYL Media channel, where we do motorsports media your way, and on this show we talk about NASCAR all the time. Before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you know when we post. There is so much to discuss with this Atlanta race, but let's start with the reason why we went into an overtime finish, which is the result of Kyle Larson thinking he was cleared, but he clearly was not. Getting into Cindric, putting him up against the wall, Cindric then ricocheting back into William Byron. The two spin out, and then we have a caution. After the race, Austin Cindric said he didn't know where Larson was getting his information from because clearly Kyle Larson was not clear. It was very obvious that Cindric was to his outside. And to Larson's credit, he did admit that it was likely his fault for this incident. If you listen to the in-car radio, you heard that he was told the all clear, and then he was told he's still there. Now, before I move on, for Austin Cindric, this was his race to lose. We could have said the same thing for Team Penske as a whole for Daytona. I kind of assumed that, okay, Atlanta, they're going to bring the heat. This is going to be redemption for them. And obviously, it just was not. So very unfortunate for Cindric, who I thought had this race in the bag, given if chaos didn't happen, it would have been his, but obviously we did have chaos. So sucks for that number 2 team, but we move on to our overtime restart. The overtime restart saw Chastain and Larson on the front row with Hocevar and Bell behind, and when the green flag dropped, Hocevar just kind of bailed on helping Chastain. Every man for himself. He was trying to get a win. I totally understand it. He, Bell, and Larson go 3 wide. The caution comes out for an incident in the mid-pack, and at the time of the caution, Christopher Bell is ahead, and he is your winner for the Ambetter Health 400. And to think, a weekend dominated by the Fords. There were 9 Fords in the top 10 in qualifying. The lone Chevrolet there would have been Kyle Busch. After all of that, Toyota's qualifying poorly. We have a Toyota win the race. What are the odds? So Christopher Bell, who is a consistent championship contender, is now locked into the playoffs, and he's been locked into the playoffs this early before. Think back to 2021 when he won the Daytona road course race. So similar situation that he's been in where he's been locked in early, except this time he has more experience under his belt. He has championship 4 appearances under his belt, so hopefully he can use this early lock into the playoff fight to help accumulate some more points to keep him ahead of the game. And listen, I know when we get into these overtime restarts and these cautions, you're like, oh, Christopher Bell totally stole one. And kind of, yes, but he was also pretty consistent all race long, racing inside the top 10, top 15, even sometimes top 5. He was in the mix and he played his cards right. So did he steal one? Yeah. Technically, yes, considering how the entire race went, but ultimately, though, not mad about Christopher Bell winning this one. So though I'm not mad about the winner of this race, I am mad about the consistent inconsistencies in how NASCAR is officiating the ends of these races. For instance, look at Duel 2 at Daytona. We had a crash happen at the end of that duel right before pit entry. NASCAR waited a few seconds to throw that caution flag. Here's the thing, though. These drivers could have probably raced back to the line. They were literally right there. Instead, NASCAR throws the caution, and whoever was ahead at the time of the caution was the winner. At that point, that was Austin Cindric. Unfortunate for Eric Jones. But they could have raced back to the line. They were right there. So there was frustration and controversy over that. Why throw the caution when they were right by the line? Then for the Daytona 500, we have a caution on that very last lap, but NASCAR lets these drivers race back to the line. William Byron wins it. Then we look ahead to this weekend with Atlanta. For the Xfinity Series race, NASCAR let the drivers race back to the line, even though it was a pretty grueling wreck at the end of that event. Nevertheless, they raced back to the line, and Austin Hill, who just, I don't get it with him. Like, he's insane at these super speedway tracks, winning back to back at Atlanta, his 5th win at that track as a whole. He cannot be stopped. Regardless, he wins the race on that restart. And as for today's race, they were not able to race back to the line. So what changed? Why do we keep seeing this flip-flopped, and what's the final verdict on what's going to be happening going forward? Well, what a lot of people weren't in tune to was what Elton Sawyer said to the drivers for the Cup Series prior to the race during the pre-race drivers meeting. According to Bob Pockrass on Twitter, Elton Sawyer told the drivers that NASCAR made a mistake. They should have thrown the caution in the Xfinity Series race yesterday due to debris on the track. And so if a similar situation happened during the race today, NASCAR would throw the caution. So the intent was communicated prior to the race to the drivers as to how NASCAR would officiate the ends of these races if we had a case where it came down to an overtime or a late race caution or something like that. However, that wasn't totally announced to the public, to the masses. It was announced on Twitter via some really good journalists and communicators. However, NASCAR didn't really talk to the fans about how that was going to go. So a lot of people kind of had this race end and were like, wait. There was a lot of inconsistencies the past few weeks and people are leaving this race pretty upset. So I get that for sure. So as long as this is the status quo going forward, I'm fine with it as long as we keep things consistent. Again, there's that magic word, consistency. I feel like NASCAR is consistently inconsistent, and all we want as fans is just something to hold on to, which is that consistent call. So hopefully, if this is how NASCAR is going to judge this going forward, it is kept that way going forward. But to play devil's advocate, as you always know that I do, I also understand how tricky these calls can be, especially when considering driver safety. I mean, it really is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for a lack of better words. You either have fans pissed off at you because you didn't let the drivers race back to the line and you didn't get to see a green flag finish or something like that, or you have fans pissed off at you because you put the drivers at risk saying, hey, why weren't the safety vehicles on site in the next few seconds? Why did you let them race back to the line? So ultimately, NASCAR is in a position where they can never really win. It's kind of a matter of what option will make fans less mad. But at the same time, I would rather have our competitors be safe as opposed to, making a decision that would make fans less mad. So I'm all for safety first. So this case, which is how NASCAR is judging this going forward, puts the driver's safety first. So I'm okay with it. So I'm done talking about the officiating for now until we need to bring it up inevitably, potentially again in the future. But let's go to the end of this race when the caution was called. Christopher Bell was, of course, deemed your winner. In second place, as part of that 3-wide result, we have Carson Hocevar. And Carson didn't really make a lot of friends this race. We all know Carson as a very aggressive driver from his time in truck all the way up to his time in the Cup Series. He's made aggressive moves for the better, made aggressive moves for the worse. It's a type of driver that he is. And in this race, veteran drivers were not pleased with him. To quote Kyle Busch, he said, quote, "I don't care if he wrecks the whole effing field. I'm over him. He's an effing douchebag. I'm gonna wreck his ass." Kyle Busch clearly not happy with how he was being raced by Carson Hocevar towards the beginning and middle of that event. And funny enough, they found themselves next to each other practically the entire race. And as for Ryan Blaney, Carson Hocevar actually gave him a really bad push, not centered on the back of the car, and spun him out towards the end of the race. So rightfully so, Ryan Blaney was pretty pissed off. He said, quote, "He's just a moron. He just runs right into the back of you. He has zero idea of where to bump somebody, where not to. He's swiping across my bumper and he's doing it. He just has no idea the whole race." After the race, Carson Hocevar had a bunch of drivers coming up to talk to him about how he raced them. Ross Chastain, for instance, Ryan Blaney, for instance. And Ryan actually told the media after the race that he told Carson Hocevar, "You gotta calm down." Blaney told Hocevar that, hey, a couple moves you made during this race were really sketchy and you should know better than to hit somebody in that part of the car on that part of the track. Like, he should know better. And when Hocevar had a chance to talk to the media, he said, hey, I'm not here to put together a boy band. I'm here to race and win races, which I totally understand. And some people actually compared Carson Hocevar to an early Ross Chastain in his Cup Series career. And I can kind of see that, making aggressive moves without kind of thinking about the big picture. And obviously at this point, Ross has kind of calmed down a little bit. I think we're seeing some of the aggressive racing kind of come back to life, which I really like for Ross Chastain, but it's more controlled. For Carson Hocevar, the aggressive racing is there, but it's not reined in. It needs to be more calculated and thought through in the sense that, hey, on race 2, we're not going to make enemies. Because I think for Ryan Blaney is a pretty forgiving guy, but he's going to keep that in the back of his mind. For Kyle Busch, when they're racing each other in the future between Busch and Hocevar, he's going to keep that in the back of his mind saying, hey, Hocevar is probably not going to be a guy I want to work with on a super speedway track in the future, regardless of manufacturer alliances because of how he was raced. So this instance is a learning instance for Hocevar. Hopefully he can take that and move forward, put on more calculated moves, more calculated aggression is what I'm going to call this. But yeah, I mean, Hocevar's like, I'm going to race how I'm going to race, but I understand and I apologize. But going forward, might need to think things through just a little bit more. So Carson Hocevar finished in second place. In third, we had Kyle Larson. Fourth, Ryan Blaney. He won the pole for this race. Like I said earlier, 9 of the top 10 to start this race were Fords. The lone Chevrolet was Kyle Busch, who ended up finishing this race in 7th. And Ryan Blaney, by the way, the only Ford to finish inside the top 10 for this race, again, after having a dominant qualifying performance for the manufacturer. Such a shame for them, but we move on to Circuit of the Americas, but going after Ryan Blaney, finishing 5th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., what about him? He was putting on some pretty aggressive moves during this race. We all know he was pretty aggressive during Daytona too, so a great top 5 finish for him and that team, and seeing that it worked out. In 6th, we have Denny Hamlin. 7th, like I said, Kyle Busch. 8th, Ross Chastain. 9th, Bubba Wallace. Also, fantastic paint scheme for him this weekend, by the way. And 10th, John Hunter Nemechek, another top 10 for the Legacy Motor Club number 42 car. Love to see that for him, and hopefully the consistency continues. Eric Jones actually had a top 10 type of day before he got caught in that incident, so hate that for him, but good to see that I think Legacy Motor Club really did their homework during the offseason. Now, again, these are super speedway type of races, so we're not going to really see kind of signs of consistency just yet. Give me 5 races from now, and if John Hunter Nemechek is pulling the same stats, I'm all for it. All of that said, it's now time to go into our race rating above or below the yellow line, presented by Happy Hour Racing. In case you guys didn't hear, Happy Hour Racing is the official apparel partner of ATYL Media, and I am so excited to have them as part of our family here at ATYL Media. They have some of the best officially licensed racing merchandise from Formula One, IndyCar, and of course, NASCAR. So make sure to visit the link in the description below to check out all of their incredible gear and incredible prices. I'm so excited to show you some more of what they have on future episodes of ATYL. But nevertheless, of course, this is our race rating presented by Happy Hour Racing. And all things considered, I know I did a lot of complaining. I thought this race was pretty good. We had about 50 lead changes, and with around 38 laps to go, I felt like we were changing the leader nonstop. It had me on the edge of my seat. It was so thrilling to watch. And might I say, Atlanta Motor Speedway, one of the best tracks we have on the schedule, hands down. Put it next to Kansas. Like, if we changed out, like, Kansas and Atlanta back and forth for 36 weekends, I'd be happy. I think I'd be good. I mean, probably throw in Charlotte and probably throw in one Daytona race at least, but nevertheless, that is how highly I think of this track. But then, of course, we cannot forget how the end of this race just kind of killed some momentum that we had there. The more we change these rules and make things inconsistent, it's very frustrating, and sometimes it illegitimizes the winner or the result that we have. So again, like I said earlier, hopefully we can figure this out quickly. And also, I would be remiss if I did not mention the viewing experience for the fans at home. I love that we have side-by-side commercials. I really do. It's way better than having a crap ton of full-screen commercials where we can't see anything, right? However, we had side-by-side commercials like every 5 to 10 laps, and it became unbearable. And a lot of those side-by-side commercials happened when a lot of action was happening on the track. And I would have loved to have heard Mike Joy kind of talking us through that, as opposed to going to commercial and seeing something happening and being like, all right. Or some other production issues during this race where there were some weird cuts with some like footage or a sidebar story or whatever it is that went over what maybe Jamie Little or one of the broadcast reporters were saying. Like, altogether, the viewing experience for this race for somebody at home was messy. Unfortunately, I have not checked out the HBO driver cameras yet, but I've heard from some people that they are too ahead of the broadcast and the audio and video don't always sync up. So if you were looking for that to be your secondary viewing experience option, there's still some work to be done there. I ended up listening to some of the radio on the NASCAR app just to kind of get some more information during the race, but altogether, the viewing experience so far this season has been frustrating. And I went back and watched the Daytona 500 on broadcast. I was there at the track. Also awesome to say hello to you if you guys were there. But yeah, the viewing experience was not great. And unfortunately, that does knock my rating down a little bit for this. And I hate to say that the broadcast has anything to do with it, but that's the race that we are seeing. That's the race that we are getting. And that is with Fox's production sometimes. So all of that said, I hope we can clean up the officiating, and I hope the production for Fox continues to hopefully improve as the season goes on. I get the season just started. There's a lot of new happening. So fingers crossed things get better. But for me, I would rate this race probably a 79%, which is definitely above the yellow line. Like I said, it was enjoyable. It was fun. I'm trying not to let the end of the race or some production hiccups get in my way of what I loved about this. But yeah, I'm excited to go back here in the summer. So what did you think of the Better Health 400? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, for more from us here at Above the Yellow Line and of course ATYL Media, make sure to go to AboveTheYellowLine.com and follow us all on social media. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your friends and family. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Above the Yellow Line. And until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.